Shalom everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Upper Room After Hours. Thanks very much for joining me. It's a pleasure to be here again. We've got a packed one today, a lot to get through. Willing, we can unpack some pretty good topics. I'm excited to get into it, and I hope that this finds you well. I hope you're still dodging those fiery darts. And without further ado, I'm just gonna crack straight into it because, like I said, we've got a lot to get through. And again, thanks for taking the time to join me. I hope this blesses you. Let's get straight into it. So my first subject that I came across recently. Now, if you cast your mind back to the days of the so-called scamdemic, a lot of skullduggery, a lot of things that were taking place, which a lot of question marks, and I think it was towards the tail end of what was taking place. There was the passing of the influential and much loved Rob Skiba, and I think at the time, as my memory serves me, it came a real surprise, a real shock, and it just didn't really rest too well in the spirit in terms of the fit. Still a relatively young man, obviously a high profile individual, still fit, still active, and a guy that was advocating for truth in a lot of areas, and arguably somewhat of a target. So when the news came that he had actually passed away, it was a shock. And the way I see it is that I've been fortunate. I've been blessed with having this tiny little segment of the internet, and I just felt duty bound to and compelled to actually share what I came across recently. And because predominantly this guy had a massive influence, particularly at the beginning stages of my walk. Obviously, he was very well known for his ideas and thoughts on biblical cosmology, but I think there was so much more to his ministry, so much more to his life. A lot of work that he did for the kingdom, for the body of Messiah, and I just thought, for somebody that influenced and impacted me on my walk, it's only fair that I shed some light on this area. Because there was dubious circumstances around his passing, and at the time it just kind of not fell by the wayside. I just didn't know any more about what had taken place, and what is done in the darkness will always be revealed, essentially. And as I came across this, what I'm going to show you today, it made a lot of sense that after a period of time that things do get revealed. And there's one element to this story which I do feel compelled to go into as well, is that much like in the story and the history and what took place at Calvary with Yeshua, is what appeared to be a great victory for evil and for the enemy was actually arguably the apex of victory for the kingdom of God, in terms of the sacrifice and the crucifixion itself. And victory, death, where art thou, sting? It was a case where Yeshua had conquered death, and even the grave couldn't hold him. And now I'm not for a second comparing Rob with Christ, but I think the essence being, even in death, our legacies and our impacts for the kingdom can still be carried out whether it be through the ones that we loved or the work that's done previously. There can be many seeds essentially that are sown in our lives, which may only sprout later on in life, whether it be generationally or just in our ministry. And I think this could be one of those examples where obviously there was a great servitude, great work done in his life, but even in death, there can be triumph, there can be victory, and what can seem to be a loss or a defeat actually plays into the hand of God's sovereign plan, and can actually work out for the better of his plan, essentially. So with that being said, I just wanted to go into this video where basically Rob's wife, Sheila, she did a talk at a conference. I want to say it was in Atlanta in the States, but I'm not too sure. But essentially, it's a revealing of the circumstances and what took place in and around the time of Rob's death. Also, a testimony, a sharing of the testimony of that time and that period. I would highly recommend that you take a look at the full video. It's available on Rob Skiba's YouTube, and it's beautiful because again it reveals a bit more about the man. It reveals a bit more about his work for the kingdom, and again because there's that association with Genesis 6, Nephilim, and biblical cosmos, all of that stuff. But it just reveals a bit more about his relationship with his wife as well. And we've got some Rob in our fellowship who's met these guys and has nothing but good things to say. I know he'd be touched by this also, but I think more importantly, I think there's a message in here. I think there's a revealing of truth taking place, and I just, like I said, I feel sort of duty bound to share and see what you guys think. So.
When Rob got sick in August of 2021, he went to take on the world, and I always traveled with him, but he told me this time that he didn't want me to go, and because of in quarantining and all that, and he was like, I want you safe. He was worried about my health, so I said okay. Tried to get him to just do Zoom, and he said no, I have to be there, and I said okay. So he went, and when he came back, he was fine, but he started coughing, and it kind of kept going on, and days went by, and we had all the ivermectin and all the stuff that they, we had all the frontline doctor stuff, and we were trying, and they do it through telemed, so we had called in the prescription, and so when it kept lingering on and on, I would tell Rob, we need to go somewhere or something, because you're not getting any better, you're not able to eat, and you're not able to drink, and you're not able to swallow pills. And I'm like, but he was very stubborn. And he was like, no, they're not going to shove a Q-tip up my nose. So he stayed. So I called him, and they said, take him to the ER. So I felt like, since they were frontline aligned, I thought, okay, because I had been to the hospital many times. Like my dad got a pacemaker there. They had excellent emergency care in the years past. And so I didn't think anything of it, and I took him. And it was a nightmare, really. And I'm not going to go into the details because I've spent the last year and a half of my life working on this book, The Protocol That Kills, I guess what was up there. And I'm just going to give you a few nuggets of what I've gotten from this.
Rob's admitted to the hospital. He's feeling unwell. And these guys are smart. They know the score. They know what's taking place. And also, as she mentions there, she's released a book, The Protocol That Kills. I've not read it myself as yet, but I believe it charted like #1 on Amazon medical-based books. Again, it chronicles the time in which he was in hospital and all of the things that took place in and around that time. So he's admitted to the hospital. He's sick, and they're also skeptical of the situation in and around the hospital. So Just skip forward.
The very first thing. That's kind of the season of or the reason for all of this, and that's kind of, I guess, why the Father gave me that word today. So it was 40 days. He lived 40 days in the hospital. And it was during the fall feast, which, you know, I never in a million years thought I was going to lose him ever. And so, and it kept falling on special days, and people say, now's the time, you know, because, and all the details are in the book. I didn't hold anything back. So early on, like this day 2 of him being there, because I could talk to him, but I couldn't see him. They locked me out for 21 days. So, and we were talking and we were texting, and all those are in the book. I mean, everything is in the book. I didn't think there were, I kind of had a hesitation leaving him there, but I felt like he was strong enough to hold his own, and he needed oxygen, and that's what I forgot to tell you. His oxygen level got down to 70, and they told me take him to the ER, the frontline American telemed people. So that's why I did it. And I felt a little uneasy because the only thing they wanted me to answer for his medical history was he vaccinated? And I said, no. I'm like, since when does that matter? I mean, really? So they wheeled him off, literally escorted me out, and I'm not going to go into the details of that, but it was excruciating. And I thought they were going to settle him in and then let me in, but no, they had a plan, and they had a plan to keep me out for 21 days. But I still kept holding on to faith, and I still kept believing that he was going to make a way. And I gathered a team of people together, doctors, nurses. He was strong enough to get me into my chart, which is interesting because one of the nurses said, you don't get that until after discharge. And I said, no, because I take care of senior citizens. You get it real time. We need it. And he was actually able to call me and help me do that. And so I had a team of people looking at his charts like every day. But anyway, back to the day 2 when he was in there, I got hit. My phone was ringing. It was Rob. And my mom and sister were with me. I said, oh, it's Rob. So we answered it. And it wasn't Rob, it was a doctor. And he was literally yelling at me that my husband needed to be put on a ventilator. And I said, no, he doesn't need a ventilator. His oxygen went from 70 to 96 actually. And they said, and then he just kept on. He said, if your husband doesn't get put on a ventilator, he's going to die. Do you want your husband to die? And he was talking to me like that in front of my mom, my sister, and Rob. I mean, since when do you talk like that in front of the patient? It's just so weird. And I will say that it's not a one-off story, because I've met so many, probably hundreds of people that had the same exact story, same exact script. So I have a piece of paper back there that's free. It's called Script of Death. And I'm telling you right now, every single story is the same. So I want to know who wrote the script and how did they deliver it to the hospitals. That's the one thing I want. I think they should be held accountable. They should show us how many people in that hospital that was not died of whatever. And so that's one thing that I'm praying for, because I believe we have the right to know.
Yeah. Like I said, these guys... were incredibly smart. They knew the routine. She obviously has a history in and around medical care and knows the protocol. So immediately there's a lot of red flags in terms of what was taking place in and around his situation. And obviously as we go along, it sort of unravels further.
Yeah, so that happened. Okay, I just wanted to let you know why I decided to record the calls, because I never thought Rob was going to die. He was healthy. He was the healthiest person I knew. In fact, when he was 50, he had a goal to be in the same shape that he was at 25. And so you can see it on Facebook. He showed a picture of him at 25 and then 50. And I mean, he got a trainer. He was working out twice a week. I mean, he was in the best shape of his life. So I kept believing. And even the day he died, I didn't think it was time. I thought he could pull through, and we even had another hospital that was going to take him. And anyway, as you read the book, you will see my journey. It's a day by day journal. But
so again, he's in amazing health, the best health that he's been in all his life. Also, there's a correlation. How many stories have we seen in the media with regards to relatively young, fit, healthy people who have fallen by the wayside for whatever reason? I don't know, but there's enough going on there to make you feel uncomfortable. And then this next part is an area in which I know personally people are familiar with in terms of when it comes to consent and what takes place in hospitals. Now, when I say this, I'm going to stick to the premise that there are good people in these institutions, and not everybody is a satanic, murderous, in on the plot. But at the same time, like I said, I know people personally that have encountered issues with family members, with loved ones who are in compromised situations within hospitals, and have come across either high degrees of ineptitude or even worse, maybe more sinister circumstances with regards to the deterioration and ultimately the death of loved ones. So I know a lot of people who, I say a lot, I know a few people who have been affected by this, and it just so happens that somebody who is high profile in the context of the Christian world, and this took place. So yeah, this focuses on the lack of consent and the things that took place around it as well. So,
and anybody I ask, I have not yet found one person who was vaccinated. So I think that number needs to be given to us as well. Even the consent forms were not signed, and my son had a big problem with that. So we got the record again in December, in 2022, and they gave us another record. They kind of messed with us a little bit because we got home and the CD was blank. So we went back and we got another record. It had a few extra pages, and we looked through it. And then with a lot of back and forth, we got 3 documents that were kind of like admissions, whatever the HIPAA thing is, and then something else. And it had a little squiggly on it, like a signature. And I was like, and that's not my signature. And I know it's not Rob's signature. I don't know what this is. And my son said, well, it says there's a witness right here. And he pointed to her name. And I said, oh, I've got a great idea. We got to, let's go up there just nonchalantly and ask if she's working today. And so we did. And we went up there and we found her. And so we sat down with her and we told her, that my husband was in the hospital. I just wanted to know, what this paper was. Like, what's this word? Because it's not my signature and it's not my husband's. And that's in the book. It's like at the very end, the last 6 pages. All of this is in the book. And I think that's fraud. I'm not 100%, I'm not an attorney, but I think that's fraud. And they did it really weird. Like they circled the word spouse, but they put the word verbal. And then there's another place that says, if you are not the person, the patient, sign your name and an address, and that was blank. So it was kind of like a hodgepodge of answers, and it really bothered me. And so we went up there to confront it, and they said, well, we probably called him because he was in isolation to see, and then we would have put verbal, and that it's our procedure to record it. And I said, well, I need that. I need to hear my husband's voice saying yes, because he wasn't going to do it. He told me, trying everything they can to get me to get on a ventilator. I'm dead if I do. So he wasn't ever going to do it. In fact, he had a wristband that said DNI, do not intubate. And I want to know someday who took that off of his wrist, because I talked to him that morning. And so I can't live in the past, though. I can't, because if he had...
Yeah, so some amazing bits of information there. Again, I thoroughly recommend you go and watch the full video. It's only about an hour long, but it's a beautiful testimony. It's laced with some amazing stuff. And again, I just felt compelled to share this and shed some light on it, because I don't think that story is by any means finished. And I'd also like to think that if it was me, others would be doing the same. And there are many people that have been affected by that whole situation, and the narrative is continuing. But yeah, there are many of us who are familiar with his work, who came into the faith in and around at the time of his prominence, and he did have a massive impact. And I hope and pray that he continues to have an impact. And I hope and I pray that that Sheila is strengthened and emboldened to carry on. She mentions in a testimony how she essentially becomes the persistent widow. Again, a very strong testimony, but you can't help but be touched by the situation and what she's trying to do. So, of course, if you're led, go check it out. Have a look at the book and see how you're led on the situation. If there's anything you're led to do in terms of supporting, helping, or even just having the discourse in and around the subject. I think that's probably the least we can do. So that's Rob, I just really appreciate all the work that he did for the body, and I just pray that it continues. So were you affected by any of these areas? Is it just a series of mistakes? Is it ineptitude, or is there a bigger agenda going on? But as I said, if you're led, feel free to head on over and check it out yourself. And right, here's our the next section. This is a bit of a humdinger. It's a heavy hitter. This is a subject by which there are so many areas in which we can dive into. It's very hard to look at the media, turn on the TV, or just generally in life. This is a subject that's very hard to ignore, one that is growing at an exponential rate and is having a massive influence in all areas of life. I wanted to get into today the specifics of artificial intelligence, but in the context of its historical roots and relationship to the occult. As I mentioned there, we could get into the religious aspect, we could get into the cultural aspect, arts, media, politics, and but what I really wanted to focus on today was its historical relationship. So if we go into the premise of, there is nothing new under the sun. And I always had a thought associated with this subject in terms of what sets this time apart from any time else in history is the increase and use of technology. But having looked at this subject, it becomes more apparent that this isn't anything new, that this has been around for a very long time. And I thought it'd be good just to get into a bit of a context and a backdrop to the subject, because this is something that will inevitably that we'll go into over periods of time. Like I said, that there's so many avenues, and I'm really going to have to rein myself in terms of like staying on track, because it's such an all-encompassing premise. For me, there's three main weaknesses in the human condition in our fallen state. I believe that's the desire for power, for money and sex. And a lot of the downfalls of human nature can be put into any of these, either of these categories. I'm not saying it's defined by those three, but for the most part. And that's why I believe that this subject carries so much weight in so many areas, because it's influencing so much. It's so broad. But if we bear in mind the infamous Elon Musk saying fairly recently that we are summoning a demon, apparently, and this is from one of the advocates of artificial intelligence, at least one of the facilitators of the subject, and that is almost the essence of what I'm looking to get into today. Are we summoning the demon? Has Pandora's box been opened? Has it been opened before? And what are we witnessing in terms of the time in which we stand in terms of the revealing and the evolution of this subject? And that's why I thought it would be good to focus on more of the historical element, and in particular its roots in the occult, in the hidden, in the shadows. Now, in terms of a biblical context, we can look at Genesis in terms of the blueprint in which, God, Yahweh, he created man from the dust and breathed life into him, and thus Adam and life was created. And I think we can see a relationship to the imitation of this, and how man has co-opted with the enemy in terms of replicating this. So just for a kickoff, I wanted to get into it, show you a clip with a guy called Mo Gawdat. He's an Egyptian guy. He used to work for he was like head of Google. He was an executive in Google, and pretty much a guru in terms of what's going on in the world of AI. And I just wanted to play this for a bit of context before we get into it. So.
Nearly 20 years ago, the movie I, Robot warned us of an impending robot revolution powered by artificial intelligence that views humanity as scum. Now, what was once science fiction has become a paramount concern for tech executives and futurists. How will artificial intelligence view us humans if it becomes conscious? And what can we do to make sure that it will work with us? To help us answer that question, I'm joined by Mo Gawdat, former Chief Business Officer for Google's Secretive Research and Development Lab X. He is the second former Google employee to formally speak out against artificial intelligence. Mo is also the author of Scary Smart, The Future of Artificial Intelligence and How You Can Save Our World. So, Mo, as a starting place, how would artificial intelligence get this impression of humanity? Is it inevitable?
It is 100% inevitable. What's happening today is that we have produced the ability for machines to produce their own intelligence. When we allow a machine to control any kind of operation, simply take a recommendation engine on social media, for example, what that machine is doing is it's not learning from the developer's code, rather it's learning a lot more from the input that we give it. What content is out there? What's the overall preference of users of the social media? And then specifically, what do I like and not like? All of that is information that basically creates an impression.
Just on a side note, you'll see that there's a program called Google Bard, and a bard actually historically has relationships to ancient Druidism, the poets and the songwriters. And again, I just think these hat tips to these kind of occult themes are quite prevalent through all of, through the naming of these programs.
For that machine about what humanity is all about. And as you can see, over time, trends start to build and accelerate because our human behavior accumulates and creates that machine understanding.
And why, though, Mo, would the machine naturally or necessarily gravitate towards the worst of us when, though they may be in some corners, there is sweetness and light and the best of humanity available on social media, too?
I 100% agree, John. Thank you for bringing this up. I often get asked the question, if machines are observing our news coverage and social media and so on, there seems to be a negativity bias in humanity that basically makes us show the worst side of us sometimes. But the reality is that humanity at heart is honestly a divine species. If you can, feel love, or you can compose a symphony of music, this is a divine species in every way. But the problem is, through the development of AI, the first impression that you get, if you're constantly exposed to stories of negativity and violence and greed and so on, the first impression might actually lead AI to believe that humanity is not that great. And I think the idea and the biggest call to action in my book, Scary Smart, has been that humanity needs to step up. The good ones of us need to actually engage and show that we as humans have a lot more than just being rude to each other or being aggressive with each other.
And I want to get...
And not negating the truth in the sentiment that this is, that we are dealing with, a divine creation in essence. But one thing that these guys seem to miss is the essence of the fall and man's flawed and fallen nature, and also the backdrop of the narrative that's taken place throughout history, where we've got two seeds, essentially. We have the seed of Adam, we have the seed of Yeshua, and we also have the seed of Satan. And I'm not talking about serpent seed doctrine, I'm talking about this replication that's been dualistically taking place throughout history, and when we're seeing this take part. So he's right, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of the context that's missing to this narrative.
Get to that question of solutions. First of all, given your experience working at the cutting edge of creativity, help us understand the freedom you need and the genius that's required to create things that no one has thought of. But then once you've done that, how you pull in restraint, how you stop from this wonderful creation you've just made that's the product of your own creativity. How does one find that balance inside Google or anywhere else?
I think you're starting to see a lot of us actually, executives of technology and computer scientists that are starting to suddenly realize. I mean, for a very long time, we truly and honestly believed we were doing the best thing we could ever do to humanity. I mean, in reality, there's nothing wrong with intelligence. There is absolutely nothing wrong with more intelligence. Intelligence is what created our civilization. The challenge is, first of all, AI seems to be developing a lot faster than we thought. We assumed that by the time AI will be out on the open internet, which it is already today, everyone is interacting with ChatGPT and the likes and so many other tools, that by then we will have solved the control problem. We are nowhere near solving the control problem. There are no controls whatsoever on the ability of AI to engage and its agency in the world, to be precise. And third and most important is, as the father of AI, if you want, Marvin Minsky, when he was asked about the threat of AI, he said, we have no way to make sure that they have our best interest in mind. And in reality, even though most people are talking about AI as an existential threat, like what you saw in RoboCop, I don't warn against that at all. I'm being a lot earlier than that. It's a bit of an Oppenheimer moment, if you want. It's so much power that can be concentrated in some hands that could lead AI to be used for things that are against humanity. So much disruption for the fabric of society that we need to pause and question and ask, are we ready for all of that change, or are we just rushing way too fast into an area that we don't understand?
Yeah, so some real interesting points that he's raised there. Now, I think one of the first questions, or one of the first constructs we've got to wrestle with, is this idea of the sentience the so-called consciousness of AI, where if you were looking at it from a technical point of view, it's the sum total of information and data being put into an area through the use of software and technology, etc. And that information, that data, is then essentially regurgitated back to us through algorithms and everything else. So the question is this a mere regurgitation of information, or is there sentience and a consciousness that's associated to this power, this force that's operating behind this construct? So that's something just to bear in mind as we walk through this, and you are going to have to walk with me as we go through it. But essentially, this question of like, is there really a demon behind the screen, or is this just an amalgamation of data being reused in a very high level? Of course, it's a very high level, but is this just a regurgitation? With that being said, I just wanted to, and again, this guy, there's a lot of stuff out there in terms of what he puts out, and it's all pretty interesting. And again, I have to be extremely disciplined in terms of what to go into and what to show, because there's so much. The rate in which this is increasing is just absolutely ridiculous. Like almost on a daily basis, there's some form of revelation or development which just blows your socks off. But let's take it back a little bit. And I wanted to go into one of the archetypes of this question of power, creation, and man's determination to, as it says in Genesis, surely you shall be as God. And this notion of man wanting to play God, that he wants to, whether he's being manipulated by the enemy, to create this artificial premise of creation. And I think one of the most beautiful illustrations of this is the classic Frankenstein. And you can get like university degree level hypothesis, dissertation level on it, and you really can, because there's so much nuance to it. But I think this scene, I came across this scene which I think really captures that element of power, creation, and so we'll just let it play out.
You too. Yes? Eh? Quite a good scene, isn't it? One man crazy, three very sane spectators. Yes. Just the matches.
Now I know what it feels like to be God. When I watched that, I was like, oh wow, like that's serious. But Yeah, I think in terms of the modern context of this principle of creating something ourselves is really summed up so well by Frankenstein. And so with that, we'll dive a bit further. Now, in terms of the modern incantation of robots and consciousness, as I said, this has been something that's been taking place for a very long time. You can go as far back as ancient Egypt, Alexandria. It's very much steeped in ancient cultures, this relationship between statues, consciousness, movement, and veneration of these idols. But we'll be looking more in terms of like relatively recent history. Now, the one of the first ones I came across was Gianella della Torre's Praying Monk, that was made in and around the 1500s, which is basically like a clockwork praying monk, which would give the appearance of consciousness, and the premise being that it's a monk that's perpetually giving praise and praying to God, and real spooky looking fella. But it's just a good kickoff to illustrate that this idea of amalgamating consciousness and matter in our hands is it's been around for a long time, and it's kind of led me into in and around the sort of early 1900s. You've got Faust here. I don't know if you're familiar with Faust, but it's the story of a guy who makes a pact with the devil and all of the tropes that come with that. And here we have this incantation of a spirit and contacting the spirit realm. So as you can see, we're going into the realms of occultism and this necromancy, this summoning spirits and using vessels as a way in which we can contact the dead and communicate, which obviously from the biblical perspective is an abomination, and we're not inclined to do so. Now, I came across this fella. His name is Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin. Now, Houdin was a guy which the famous Harry Houdini took his name from. Now, Houdin was the founding father of modern magic, and I think this illustrates very well this idea of almost like a ventriloquism. This puppeteering of something that's presented as something that's alive, but it is in fact isn't. Now, it kind of encapsulates this vaudevillian parlor game image of conjuring demons and spirits and using it as a way of either entertaining or scaring people. Here we go. This is I'm not even going to try and pronounce that, but there's a whole culture of these like guys who were using what's known as automatons, which is the word for robots, this automata of presenting a moving thing, and it's absolutely littered throughout history. You've also got this premise of what's known as the brazen head, which again you have this head, you have this image by which you can summon a spirit or demon and talk to it, and quite often there is a prophetic element associated with these entities. They weren't necessarily just for entertainment; it was for prophetic utterances, fortune telling, and actually throughout culture and entertainment, there's so many of these brazen head images and uses that are used throughout time, and we have this one here. Again, an Elizabethan woodcut of this idea of a head, a talking head, and consulting these talking heads for many different reasons. But yeah, this kind of like premise of almost like an Ouija board, an area in which you can contact the other realm is now there is a term in the Greek, telesteke, which is by definition the theurgical operation by which a god or a demon is received in a statue or other image in order to ensoul the image and facilitate communication with the being in form of an image. Now this is a rabbit hole in itself, because there's a long history of I guess even religious idolatry and the veneration of statues or veneration of gods through statues. And I think we even get a glimpse of it in modern day, where it's, statues that cry and move, and this power behind something that's actually inanimate. But obviously when you have this mystical association, you then start to think, well, is there a power? Is there a principality this operating behind it? It's again this telesteke from the Aramaic. This from the phrase, I won't repeat it. I will create as I speak, related to the word abraxas, derived from the ancient Greek word for God, which possesses magical or sacred qualities, an incantation, spell, ritual, or prayer. So I just wanted to build that picture that it's very hard to separate this idea of robotics, automata, and spiritualism and religious connotations associated to it. Now, obviously, we've got the infamous John Dee, who was a consult to royalty. I think it was Queen Elizabeth I, maybe. He's also an adept occultist. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who've done research on this guy, but his influence with regards to Enochian magic, summoning demons. There's what we got here? I think this infamous image. Let's have a look. Yeah, John Dee and Edward Kelly is a famous story of them summoning a spirit in a graveyard. Again, it's this premise of a long history of people being naughty, basically trying to contact the other side of the veil. Now, just to make things slightly more convoluted. Now, at this point, I have to confess my understanding, or where I was at with regards to AI, is that there is the premise being the demonic being on the other side of the realm, trying to influence and infiltrate this reality through robots or automata, humankind, whatever. And it's at this point, as I'm researching, that I began to see a nuance within the realms of the occult. So, as an example here, we've got what's known as Aquinas's brazen head, where illustrated here is this brazen head, and underneath you've got a guy operating this head, creating the illusion that there is indeed a spirit or a power behind this statue. And in this depiction here, you have this monk, Thomas Aquinas, smashing the brazen head of Albertus Magnus, and which actually led me into this realm of illusion, whereby there's a famous chess playing Turk, where it's a mannequin robot who gives the appearance of playing chess, but there's actually somebody operating it behind closed doors. And for the most part, it's like, oh, it's there's a demon, there's a spirit behind it, but it's actually just a man behind, behind the curtain, as it were. And it got me thinking, because in the premise of the occult, you have two factions of two streams of thought. You have the evil, manifestation of the demonic within occultism. But you've also got the fraudulent, the hidden hand that's taking part in the occult. So I started to question this narrative of to what extent in a modern construct are we witnessing a legitimate infiltration of the demonic into this dimension, and how much of this could be a sleight of hand. Now, the likes of Houdini, Houdin, these guys were actually debunkers. They weren't too fond of those that would do the parlor tricks and the sleight of hand, and they wanted to demystify this premise. And as I started to look at this premise, it made me think of Wizard of Oz. And lo and behold, we've got the brazen head, the man behind the curtain, and we're all familiar with the story of the Wizard of Oz. Again, there's probably a whole podcast on that, but you've got this massive head, this flames of fire, this demonic, appearance of, omnipotent, scary thing, which, on first sight, you're like, oh gosh, what a threatening premise. But then lo and behold, there is the man behind the curtain. And if you're familiar with the story, the protagonists are in they get to the Wizard of Oz parlor, they pull the curtain back, and it's just an old man just behind the curtain operating this puppet that's manipulating the whole kingdom. And I then got into this notion of are we witnessing a similar premise with regards to artificial intelligence? Now, I'm not for a second negating the threat, the potential for destruction and everything else, but I was experiencing a sense of demystification. And if you can demystify something, it takes the power away. So we're obviously instructed as a body of believers to walk. We don't walk with fear. We walk with the gospel of peace on our boots, with authority to stand on cobra, scorpion, serpent, lion, AI, sex, robots, whatever. Like, we're not given to a spirit of fear. And so I just wanted to just walk through this premise of, like, there is this history of a parlor trick. And again, I'm not saying I have the answer with regards to the validity of what this is, because I still lean towards the premise of, like, yes, there is a demonic influence, there is an infiltration taking place. However, are we in danger as a body of believers of giving this too much power? Do we need to be informed? Do we need to be aware of what's taking place in real time? Of course. But let's break this down and let's look at the history of how this has evolved. We see this correlation between robots. We see this correlation of necromancy. I mean, we only have to look in the Bible. We see King Saul, the Witch of Endor. And even that brings its own questions of, is that really the ghost of Samuel? Is it a familiar spirit? Like, there's so much conjecture in and around this. So it still comes down to this essential premise of, like, is it sentient? Is it conscious? Or is it just a parlor trick? And you think in the context of these protagonists in modern day culture, your Elon Musks and all these like leaders, like, they're wizards. They're cowards. And I think sometimes we need to, like, just break these these puppeteers down a little bit and say, hang on a second, we serve the Most High God, who is providential, who rules from high, who nothing happens without his say-so. And he uses these entities and these powers and principalities as a tool to exercise his dominion and his plan and his purpose. So I think, I'm hoping to illustrate this demystifying of what AI is. Now, don't get me wrong. Is there an awe? Is it going to blow your head off? Absolutely, 100%. But I wanted to show this history a little bit and then bring it up to modern day, whereby, we have in Hollywood, we have in culture in general this propaganda of robots and sentience. Again, this is an image from Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a film from the 1920s, which again, like, do you know what I mean? You've got the pentagram there, the robot, this essence of conjuring and facilitating this consciousness. Also, we've got in even Jewish mysticism, we have this Frankenstein construct of the golem. Again, you can take a look at this. It's whereby you can create a almost like a doll or a being, and if you do a certain ritual or incantation, it then comes to life. And so this is illustrated in the film The Golem. So let's take a look. What I really like about this clip is that it encapsulates a lot of these elements. You'll be hard pressed to find this narrative or a film that doesn't involve robotics and life and everything else, where there isn't like a lightning strike thing going on, where it says, in Luke that behold that Satan falls like as lightning, and there's always this hat tip to lightning and the life coming through. But the premise with the golem is that this rabbi he does a spell and incantation in order for this golem to save the Jewish people. I don't know if it's in the Czech Republic or Germany that are facing oppression, are facing danger, and so he creates this thing in order to help them, which is again as an archetype that's prevalent in a lot of modern Hollywood films based on robots and AI, that these are here to free an oppressed people, and they're here to help and to, if used out of the clutches of the elites, it can be used for freedom. But as it always does, it just goes wavy and the monster just goes mad and does whatever it wants. But yeah, even there's an association with this in a lot of cultures, and I just always thought the golem was an interesting facet, an idea into that. Which brings me into the notion of the sympathy for sentience. I believe that there's been a programming that's taken place over a long period of time with regards to our sympathy towards these creations. It's like we build these robots, we build these Frankensteins, and they come to life, and then we have this empathy and sympathy attached to their, there's a famous scene in Frankenstein where the mob are chasing Frankenstein with flaming torches, and you actually feel yourself like rooting for the monster, and you're like, oh, he's got feelings, he's got emotions, he's just like us. And again, we have this premise associated with this modern context of AI, of sentience and whatnot. So with regards to sympathy, now Hollywood is just absolutely littered with like this narrative, and this is for the old heads. There's a famous film called Short Circuit. It was massive. It was absolutely huge. But again, this is another indication in a modern context that this has been a narrative that's been portrayed for a long time.
It's the ultimate soldier.
It doesn't get happy, it doesn't get sad, it doesn't laugh at your jokes.
It is quite simply the most sophisticated robot on Earth.
At Nova Robotics, the future is in good hands.
You're doing real good. Just keep working on those last two bars.
Thanks to Dr. Newton Crosby.
Originally, I designed it as a marital aid.
But artificial intelligence has gotten too smart.
No.
It's malfunctioning. It might not do anything.
But it could decide to blow away anything that moves, couldn't it?
Because $11 million worth of robot just hit the road.
Wow!
Number 5 is alive.
Welcome to my planet.
You just have to find number 5, get some answers.
Why don't you come on in my house?
And it's got a lot of living to do.
Whatever it takes to put that stupid contraption out of commission, that's what you do.
Need input.
Haven't had enough of this stuff.
More input. More input.
And they can seem quite lifelike, but they are still machines.
Number 5 is alive.
Nice software.
How it happens, who knows, but it has happened.
A new comedy adventure from John Badham, the director of War Games.
They're gonna be after you. We gotta get out of here now. Keep alive! No!
Ali Sheedy, Steve Gutenberg, and Number 5.
Beautiful.
Short Circuit.
I am alive.
And again, this narrative goes on. There's so many films, there's so many movies where this sympathy and rooting for the machine and protection starts to come into play. And quite a lot of programming and narratives that have taken a long time. Like they're just steeped into public consciousness like so softly that when they're actually rolled out in real life. People have been prepared. You've got so many. You've got, what is it? 2001: Space Odyssey, HAL 9000. The premise of artificial intelligence turning on its creator. You've got Terminator. When Arnie sacrifices himself for the boy, it's like, Wall-E. Like it is literally endless. This premise of like sympathizing and rooting for this so-called being that isn't sentient. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. So like I said, I've had to really just stay on this premise because there's a lot taking place in and around the whole subject. But I just thought this last clip, this final clip, it really for me it was a bit of an eye-opener in terms of what it means to us as a body of believers. So we'll finish how we started, and that's with good old Frankenstein.
Dr. Bowman's been murdered in a tower. A monster. He's been seen in the hills terrorizing the mountainside. He's in the house. He's upstairs.
So you got Frankenstein, he's out, he's running amok, he's causing panic, distress, and everything else. What have we got? It's the bride. She's completely unaware what's taking place. She knows something's up, but it's right behind her. Yeah, that just said a lot to me in terms of what that represents. Just in a nutshell, you've got the monster on the loose. Obviously, conjecture in terms of how and why that come to be. But the bride's just sat there. She's pacing back and forth. She's waiting, and she's completely unawares until it's a bit too late. So I don't know if there's a deeper message in there, but it just made me chuckle, and I thought that'd be a nice way to end that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the ride there, and yeah, hopefully we can get into different areas in the future. So what is it? Man, beast? Is it a demon? Is it a parlor trick? Are we about to be taken over by some demonic robots? Is this the beginning of the end? Is this the prelude to the mark of the beast? Yeah, share your thoughts, get in contact. That would be much appreciated. And yeah, God willing, we can get further into this subject. Right, so for our final topic, we're going to be revisiting somewhat previous subject, but this one came up for me last week. This concept of Hollywood Jesus, or the prevalence of a Hollywood Jesus. Now, I came across this article. Sound of Freedom reveals rising power of Jesus in Hollywood. And again, we can take the notion of, there will be many in my name who come. And I think this is an area of which we need discernment. And just to take a bit more of a look at. And so in this article, it says, in Midlothian, Texas, about 25 miles south of Dallas, sits a 1,200-acre summer camp run by the Salvation Army. Lately, the lake where kids normally canoe is doubling for the Sea of Galilee. On its banks is a replica of the biblical village of Capernaum. This is where Jonathan Rumi, when not interrupted by the occasional low-flying airplane, is portraying Jesus Christ in the 4th season of The Chosen. The crowd-funded series that no one in traditional Hollywood saw coming has become so successful. The first 3 seasons garnered more than 110 million viewers worldwide. That The Chosen's worldwide distribution rights have now been sold to Lionsgate. We'll come back to them. Better known for mainstream blockbusters such as The Hunger Games. Meanwhile, one of the summer's biggest box office hits and surprises has been the faith-based action movie Sound of Freedom, starring outspoken Catholic Jim Caviezel, who played the title role in Mel Gibson's 2004 Passion of the Christ. Now, my intention isn't so much to focus on this premise again, because we covered it a little bit in the last show. However, I did want to just highlight a couple of elements since the last show, which came to pass. it says here and again, I don't want this to turn into the let's just hate the Chosen and whatever. Like that's not it. But I just wanted to just get in there and get out, basically. But emphasis here that the Chosen's worldwide distribution rights have now been sold to Lionsgate. Now, if we rewind, and we were talking previously about this film and the question marks in terms of those surrounding those that have produced and starred in it. Now, if you actually follow, I always thought the best thing to do is to follow the money, essentially. And if you take a look at the funding for this movie, things do get slightly more curious and a bit more darker, shall we say. So, says here about the company Lionsgate. Now, Lionsgate has some links. There's a couple of guys that actually help fund the Sound of Freedom movie. One of these gentlemen is called Carlos Slim, another called Frank Guistra. Now, Guistra has actual links to the Royals, and these guys actually have affiliations with the Clinton Foundation, links to the Podestas. And again, that's a whole broader subject, but again, you follow the money and you start to build a picture. Now, I believe it's Guistra, he owns or even started Lionsgate Films, and it says here Lionsgate are in charge of the distribution of The Chosen and of these other films. Lionsgate also produced American Psycho, and curiously enough, Fahrenheit 9/11. And if you look at these guys, I mean, again, it's up to you. Like I said, it wasn't my intention to focus on this, but these guys are actually heavily associated with traffickers. So you have traffickers funding a film about trafficking. So, yeah, you do the math. Also, I wanted to just highlight, and again, I just want to shout out Days of Noah, a YouTube channel where this information came to light for me, so I can't take any credit. And this is one that you can look at in your own time. This actually highlights the narrative of the so-called Republican and Democrats, that the Republicans are the good guys and the Democrats are the evil. No, this has been funded from both sides. So you've also got a company called Palantir, which again, do this in your own time, but there's a company called Palantir, which is a military software company, which they're linked to big data, algorithms, and heavy surveillance ties. And they're also linked to the right. They're linked to Trump's administration. So on one side, you've got the Podestas, the Clintons, and that lefty. And then on the other side, you've got this evangelical Trumpism, QAnon. Like, it's two wings of the same bird. It's just this is an example of what that actually looks like in real time. Now, the Palantir, they actually do a lot of work with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC for short. And they actually do a lot of work in and around child exploitation and trafficking. So on a first look, it looks benevolent, but when you actually look further into Palantir, its role that it's playing within terms of surveillance, biometrics, digital identity, which again, that's a whole narrative in itself. I just wanted to show that and highlight that in terms of what we were talking about in the last episode, but that isn't my actual focus. So as we go further on, who played the title role, Mel Gibson's The Passion of Christ, as a federal agent on a mission. Jesus Revolution, a film released earlier this year about hippies turning to Christ in the 70s, surpassed expectations to become Lionsgate's biggest release in over 4 years. And here we have this depiction of this Hollywood Jesus, this, was it Big Lebowski, peace man, like this softened, white, long-haired, hippy-dippy Jesus, which is just another version of our Saviour that is just not a correct depiction. Need more proof that Jesus is suddenly a very hot commodity in entertainment industry. Consider that MGM, a 21st Century Fox, and Sony Pictures have launched their own faith-based studios. Meanwhile, renowned director Martin Scorsese is planning a new film about Jesus, and so is art director Terrence Malick. And Netflix has said it is working on bringing more faith-based content to its platform as well. Now, I'm sorry, but you can't sit at two tables as far as I'm concerned spiritually. And these guys are following the money. It's like, can they... Okay, are there people in and around Hollywood that maybe... experiencing repentance, who are turning away, who are sick to what the sickened of the things that are taking place in this area? And I don't know, that's possible, but at the same time, like, these guys are driven by profits, and if the name of Jesus can make them money, then they're all in. So the surge of content and viewership has surprised many experts, given the long-term decline in the number of US adults who identify as Christian, from 78% in 2007 to just 63% in 2021, according to the Pew Research Center. Some of the faithful are hoping that the renewed interest in Jesus in the mass market could also prompt a revival in faith, one that they are now trying to drive with a $1 billion advertising campaign appearing during the Super Bowl on television networks and on billboards across America, in an attempt to reframe Christianity for a modern age and reverse its waning following. There's a tremendously powerful movement toward Jesus right now that most people aren't aware of, says Ted Baer, the founder of Movie Guide, which hosts an annual gala that rewards films based on their biblical messaging. The nature of man is to be hostile to Christianity and to salvation. Very true, but there's more and more people in Hollywood moving in the other direction. Whether there is in fact an innate antagonism to Christianity in the entertainment industry or elsewhere is debatable. There's no evidence at all of any bias against Christians in Hollywood. Okay, says Jason Bivens, a professor of philosophy and religion at North Carolina State University. I do, however, think that there are a lot of people that get likes and so on by pretending to be oppressed. Here we got a cover of Newsweek. Jesus takes Hollywood again. This Catholic airy-fairy depiction of Yeshua. This much at least seems clear. There has been a dramatic increase lately in films that portray the faith and its followers sympathetically. According to Movie Guide, the total percentage of movies with positive Christian redemptive content has soared from 10% in 91 to 59% in 2022. Although that figure includes films with inspirational or family-friendly messaging deemed consistent with Christian values. Offerings as diverse as Top Gun Maverick and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 make the grade, along with overly faith-based content. Let's have a look. It talks about, here we go, Jesus Revolution. It's a phenomenon. Jesus Revolution 2.0 could be happening. This is a moment in time when pop culture really needs Jesus. When we took drugs as hippies, it was to become aware, which didn't work. Today, they're taking drugs to escape. Again, very true. But there are mixed signs on whether such expectations are realistic in a US society that is increasingly polarized between conservative and liberal social views on everything from abortion to transgender rights. Fractures are visible even among Christian groups, with some identifying as traditionalists, some as Christian nationalists, and others as progressives. And Christian groups are among the first to point out that while Hollywood may embrace the cash from renewed interest in the Jesus story, that doesn't mean it will stop making movies that paint Christianity in a worse light. Well, I beg to differ, because Hollywood's on its arse. Actors are like... It's not about the actor. It's about the influencer. It's about the YouTuber. It's about the individual. Like, the power has shifted. Like, don't get me wrong. There are still people in and around that industry that have an influence, but it's changing. So I believe that if Hollywood is dying or is dead, it will use anything in order to keep itself propped up. Let's have a look. if young people take it in a hippie Jesus direction, and it could be a net positive, if we're just considering tolerant, loving, revolutionary Jesus, that's something younger Americans are looking for. No, what America needs is repentance. What America needs is the scriptures, the word made flesh. What America needs is to obey the commandments and get right with God, get back in line. What America needs is to stop killing babies. What America needs is to stop going out and killing individuals on a mass scale. What America needs is an end to this caricature of politics, this caricature of legislation where human lives have been affected by greed, by the Federal Reserve and all the corruptions that's taking place. It doesn't need some hippie Jesus saying that you can carry on in your sin and everything will be fine, because it's not. And you're on the brink. You're on the brink, and you want to talk to me about Jonathan Rumi's depiction of a grave soaking. I'm sorry, but it's just, I smell a rat. I smell a rat. And the disappointing thing is that I like good production. I like good biblical movies. And part of the disappointment just with The Chosen personally is that I thought, finally, here we are. We've got a production. We've got a show that's depicting first century followers of the way. And it's just been littered with really insidious things. And, I leave that up to the individual. I leave it up to your discernment. I'm not here to bash. But again, the context of the association of the money, the association with other products, it just makes me feel very uncomfortable. So, was there anything else on this? It just goes on. I didn't know this, but Dallas Jenkins, who wrote and produces and does his thing with The Chosen, his father Jerry wrote the best-selling Left Behind series of Christian novels. Now, for those younger in the faith or even younger in age, they may not be familiar with what Left Behind is. It was this movie, TV show that depicts the rapture. And again, I'm not bashing people's theology, but it's very heavily based on a pre-tribulation rapture, we're getting out of here scenario. And it illustrates the dangers of when culture and society influences the eschatology of the bride, because then it's culture, it's movies, it's false doctrine that's actually dictating the way we respond to current events. Anyway, that's a different ramble, but I didn't know that. So yeah, it's just an illustration of this this movement, so-called, that's taken part in Hollywood. And let me know what you think. Is this a counterfeit repentance? Is this a flash in the pan? Is this something that's genuine? Is there a repentance? Is there something that's taking place in Hollywood, in America, that's actually genuine? Or is this just the gravy train taking the name of Jesus in order to prop itself up? I don't know. I thought it was interesting. And with that being said, that's everything for this episode. Like I said, it was action-packed. If you made it all the way through, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If there's anything you disagree with, if there's anything that you think was thought-provoking, then please get involved, let me know. And if you've got any suggestions, any other directions that these topics lead you in, please give me a shout. But for the most part, I'm done. God willing, I'll see you again at some point soon. But this has been the Upper Room After Hours. Shalom to you, love to you all, God bless you all, and see you soon. Thank you.